good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy. Back to Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I take my first pass at the commander in front of us on a budget on my quest to brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby. It's ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. That deck list is going to be down in the description for you below, as well as I'd really appreciate if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, consider checking out those links in the description, and let me know what commanders you want to see on the channel down in the comment section below. This week, we're knocking off a few last videos before we start Avatar content, and I can't wait. And I thought I'd go back to a very popular commander, got talked about recently on a few other channels when it comes to token decks, and of course, well known for not only its tokens, but its combos. Today, we're going to talk about the Squirrel himself, Chatterfang, Squirrel General. A 3-mana mono green creature, but it's a Golgari legend because of its bottom ability. With Forest Walk. If one or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus that many 1/1 green squirrel tokens are created instead, and we can pay a black mana and sacrifice X squirrels to give a target creature plus X minus X until end of turn. So, a couple things to make sure we specify off the riff. Remember that giving a creature minus X drops them to 0 or below toughness. They have to be sacrificed due to the they have to die due to the state-based rules, and Chatterfang's middle ability is a replacement effect, meaning that if you have multiple abilities that have replacement effects at the same time, you get to choose what order they go off in. This is important because no, Chatterfang's middle ability cannot go infinite with another card that says, oh, whenever you make a token, make a food. Those don't just go infinite back and forth. You would choose what order you want them to go off in. We're almost always going to have that other thing go off first, so that we can make, obviously, more squirrels. But I want to say a quick thank you to the channel members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in seeing all our videos just a little bit early for just $1 a month, consider checking that out down below. Well, okay, how are we going to make tokens? I mean, truthfully, there's a lot of ways you can do this in our colors, and I can't talk about every way we can make tokens in the colors, but it's important to note that it doesn't matter what type of token you make, you just need to make tokens. So something like Gala Greeter should be able to net us a tap treasure every turn when a creature comes in. Hey, that's going to make us a squirrel. Gilded Goose can make us a food token when it comes in, or it can tap to make a food. That'll make a squirrel. An example of a creature that we need to make sure we use our replacement effects the right way is a Academy Manufacturer. Whenever we make a clue, food, or treasure, we make one of each instead. So let's say we had a manufacturer and a Gala Greeters out. Gala Greeters were to go make the treasure. We're going to have manufacturers go off, a replacement go first, giving us a clue, food, and a treasure. And then, right, Chatterfang would make 3 squirrels. So you can kind of see how that works. Peregrine Took, if one or more tokens we made under control, we make that many tokens plus an additional food. Again, have this go off first so that you can make more squirrels. Tireless Provisioner, when a land comes in, we can make a food or a treasure. So that works out well with cards like Peregrine Took and some of the other cards in the deck that care about treasures, or we can make, or care about food, or we can make treasures, right, for mana. We have a couple spells that just make treasure or make squirrels. You have things like Chatter of the Squirrel and Chatterstorm that can just make squirrel tokens. And then remember that Chatterfang will always make you another squirrel because it doesn't care about what type of token's made. It just says, hey, I'm going to make another squirrel for you. We have things like Pest Infestation, which can destroy up to X target artifacts or enchantments, and you make twice X pest tokens. Again, you're going to get a bunch of pests and a bunch of squirrels, which is really nice. It's a good way to take out your opponent's key things, right, and make squirrels at the same time. Chitter Spitter lets us sacrifice a token on our beginning of our upkeep. If we do, we put a counter on it, and all of our squirrels get a buff for each counter on it, and then we can pay a green to make a squirrel. So this is really nice because, again, you can get extra squirrels from Chatterfang, and then you can buff all your squirrels, right, over the long run. Nuka-Cola Vending Machine says whenever we sacrifice a food, we make a tap treasure token, and we can tap it to make a food token. Nuka-Cola does have a couple mini combos with cards in the deck, but it's really not the goal of our deck. But you may run into scenarios where it's very well usable with Peregrine Took to get a bunch of value. Squirrel Nest lets you enchant a land and tap that land for a squirrel token each turn. And then the Shire Right can tap an untapped creature to make a food. So again, here's just easy, simple ways to make tokens alongside our other things to start getting the squirrels. But where I think the deck really shines, and the thing that's going to affect probably the most single popular combo with Chatterfang, is Aristocrats. Now, if you're not familiar with what Aristocrats is, Aristocrats as a strategy revolves around sacrificing creatures for a benefit outside of just the creature dying. So think about abilities that damage your opponent whenever one of our creatures dies. So you have things like Sealed Poor Cutthroat that just does that straight up. Each opponent loses one and we gain one whenever a creature we control dies. Nadier's Nightblade actually takes it a step further. It says whenever a token we control leaves the battlefield, each opponent loses one and we gain one. This is nice because then Nadier's Nightblade and actually Marionette Apprentice are both going to see our treasures or our food or our clues leaving the battlefield and dealing damage to and have our opponents lose a life. So they go one step further, right, in helping us out. Same thing with Agent of the Iron Throne. This is a background, so as long as Chatterfang and the Iron Throne are out at the same time, you're going to get the ability that whenever an artifact or creature we control goes to the graveyard, each opponent loses a life. Bastion, another key copy of that Poor Cutthroat ability, having everybody lose one and we gain one. Same thing with Funeral Room, on the Funeral Room half of a Funeral Room and Awakening Hall. Again, same thing, that classic Aristocrat ability. And the goal, right, if we can get multiple of them, that's great. There's less activations of Chatterfang's bottom ability that we'll need to use. And we'll talk about the combo in a second and why this is going to be statistically really easy to do to get multiple triggers of it. It's just going to come down to some other factors. Grave Pact forces our opponents to sacrifice a creature whenever one of our creatures dies. So really brutal way to stop our opponents, because remember, we can sacrifice those squirrels at instant speed, meaning that at the right time, right, we can force them to have to sacrifice things and really screw up their game plans. Meat Hook says whenever one of our creatures dies, each opponent loses a life. So again, here's more way to get that damage. Meat Hook also gives us the ability to come in and give a little mini board wipe if we need to get rid of some things on the board. But a piece that may not look like it can actually be beneficial, especially for our combo we're going to talk about in a second, is Scavenger's Talent. So this is a class enchantment that you can level up by paying the cost for each level. On the top one, it says whenever one or more creatures we control die, we make a food token. Only goes off once each turn, which is fine. That's at minimum another squirrel, which we don't mind. But the key ability we care about is the second one. It says whenever we sacrifice a permanent, target player mills 2 cards. So there's a combo we're going to talk about in 40 seconds or so, or in a minute or so. And what it relies on is having an Aristocrat's ability or some other ability to help you end the game outside of the combo. Well, this technically does it, because then every time we sack one of those tokens, somebody has to mill 2 cards, and you can then mill your opponents out, right, as a way to end the game. But we want to add some more value, especially with all the squirrels we have. We have things like Camellia, which gives all of our squirrels menace, and we could sacrifice food. We can sacrifice food to forage to put a counter on each squirrel we control. Note that whenever we sacrifice one or more foods, we get a squirrel. This is really useful because, again, we have things like Nuka-Cola Vending Machine and Peregrine Took and Gilded Goose and things like that make food. So this Bloomborough section of squirrels that care about the food and foraging are going to be really useful because they make tokens. That's already what we want to do. Valley Rockcaller on attack has each opponent lose X and we gain X, where X is the number of squirrels we control. This can be really useful as a way to start chunking your opponent's life total down if we haven't seen those Aristocrats abilities yet, but we have a way to make a few squirrels. Swarmyard Massacre is going to be a nice one-sided board wipe for us, making us 2 squirrels and then giving each creature that isn't an insect, rat, squirrel, or spider -1/-1 until end of turn for each creature we control that is one of those types. Again, being that most of our tokens are going to be squirrels, this should completely be a one-sided board wipe that should just hopefully take our opponent's things out. Eldrazi Monument can protect our squirrels, giving them flying and indestructible. The only thing is we do have to sacrifice a creature at the start of each of our upkeeps, which, again, should be fine as long as we have enough squirrel tokens laying around. Beastmaster Ascension is going to buff all of our creatures. We can get 7 counters on it. So every time a creature we control attacks, we get to put a counter on it. And then at 7 counters, all of them get flat +5/+5, turning all of our squirrels into 6/6s and a whole lot deeper of threats, right? And then we're going to play token doublers like Parallel Lives and Doubling Season to double the amount of tokens that would be made. Again, the key thing with Parallel Lives and Doubling Season is that they're still going to be useful with Chatterfang and all these abilities, because they're still going to double up the amount you make and are just going to become really useful. And again, use your brain on what way you want to have all of your replacement effects go off that you get the most tokens. But what is the combo, right? And this is the combo that when you sit down at a table with Chatterfang, this is the card that people know and the card that people are looking for. That's Pitiless Plunderer. This is a creature that says whenever a creature we control dies, we're going to make a treasure token. Now, the reason, if you haven't picked up on it yet, that's very important for Chatterfang is Chatterfang says whenever you make a token, one of our tokens, you make that many squirrels. So think about it. If I sacrifice a squirrel, I'm getting a treasure from Pitiless Plunder, and I'm getting a squirrel, right? And Chatterfang's cost to sacrifice a squirrel to potentially hurt a creature is a single black mana or one treasure. So you could start to see that at minimum, with just one squirrel, you can use this ability to effectively destroy all your opponent's creatures by giving them that minus X plus X minus X. Either one at a time or in either one at a time or in batches, depending on how you want to do it. So basically, every time you do it, you're going to end up with a treasure being made. You're going to end up with a squirrel again, and you're going to be able to do this loop. Now, technically, you can do this loop equal to as much toughness as your opponents have, right? But this is why it's necessary to pair these aristocrats effects with this combo, so that every time you're either sacrificing that treasure or those squirrels are dying, being sacrificed to Chatterfang's effect, you can be dealing damage to your opponents, right? And draining them out as you're doing this. That's the key thing. At minimum, you're going to probably get all your opponent's creatures off the battlefield, but at maximum, you can be draining your opponents out and help end the game. But I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is my first shot at Chatterfang in a while, and I think going into testing, the answer for me is just, do we have enough ways to make tokens? Do we want more things like Scoots Warhammer, creatures that make tokens when you do certain things? Scoots Warhammer makes tokens whenever a land comes in, but there's other ways to view that. Are there more creatures or spells we can find to make tokens at a really good rate, and look into that? The truth is, I think the answer is probably that we don't have enough ways to make tokens, but you don't know until you test. You don't know until you see the deck in action. Same thing with effects like Second Harvest that can either populate, which is just making one copy of one creature token you control, or Second Harvest, which just makes a copy of every token you control. So a very interesting ability, and I didn't put it in there because I was trying to focus more room for ways to draw into our key pieces, aristocrats pieces, and things like that. But Second Harvest can be really useful. Same thing with something like Jaheira, allowing our tokens to tap for mana. There's two effects you're going to see that can be really useful, and we are playing one of them already in the deck. You have effects like Cryptolith Rite or Enduring Vitality that are going to let you just tap every creature you control for mana. Whereas Jaheira actually says you can tap all tokens you control for mana, meaning that your food tokens, your clues, your whatever you might get other than treasures, because remember, treasures have to tap and sacrifice themselves for mana. You can tap those foods, you can tap those clues for mana, and now you're getting more value right out of the pieces that are set in front of you. But let's do what we love to do on the channel the most and get into our playtests. Remember, the goal of playtests on our channel is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not just to show off all our best plays, but it's to get in some gameplay scenarios and kind of understand, what hands are we looking to keep and how we're going to get our hands set up. So here you're looking at a 3-lander. We have the Nature's Lore to go get another Black Pip because we will need 3 of them for that Grave Pact. You do see Deadly Dispute lets you sack an artifact or creature to go ahead and draw 2 and make a treasure. And then Lightning Greaves can really help protect Chatterfang, something that is very beneficial because Chatterfang is going to be a big threat once people see it come out, because it is one of those creatures that if you can lock it down, it's a real threat. I think here I'm going to go for the Forager and the Lightning Greaves, just trying to protect Chatterfang. That way, if I get him in, we know he's safe. I've got 5 mana here. I mean, I don't mind Chatterfang in, get him attached, and then we're just 1 black source away from Grave Pack, right? 1, 2. So ideally, we just need another way to find another black source so we can get Grave Pact in. Oh, the Rampant Growth helps. What else would we do for 3 mana? I guess we could Deadly Dispute the Forager to try to dig for more value. That would get us. That would also get us a treasure token and a squirrel, right? I'm not sure how much this Forager is going to help me. I guess the only good thing would be that I could go deep for like a Camellia, or I could go deep for something like that if I really want to. There aren't a ton of squirrels in our deck that are really, really, really beneficial. Something like, a Pitiless Plunderer, but Camellia could be good, especially if we have a way to make food. But again, we're setting up the Grave Pact. I almost just want to wait Because now I could Grave Pact, and now I have the Deadly Dispute option, right? So I could, even on my opponent's turn, dispute this to draw 2. Right, make that treasure and that squirrel. So now we're still, getting value. Now we see Hazel, the commander of that Blue Burrow Squirrel deck, allowing us to tap manas, tap tokens, basically to make mana, which is huge. And then on end step, we get to make a token that's a copy of target token we control. And if that token's a squirrel, we make 2 copies of it instead. So this is actually a really nice play for this turn. We'll use the path to scry 1. I think we're willing to bottom that one at this point. 3 mana left. I could technically tap it up to put the squirrel nest in if I want to. I think we'll do that. And then Hazel goes off, right, making a couple copies of that squirrel. Again, it's going to, Chatterfang's going to make me 2 more. And then now you go deep on a pest infestation just to get a bunch of pests, which are all also going to make you a bunch of squirrels. But I mean, Grave Pact's going to really help you clear the board now, because every time you're sacking a squirrel, everybody else has to sacrifice a creature, and I doubt there's going to be decks at the table that can produce more than we can. Tap the squirrel nest for land for 2 more squirrels. Go deep on Chatterfang's ability, take a creature out. Everybody has to sacrifice 5 or 6, and now even though we haven't found our combo, we're still very ahead. You could then, use Hazel to tap some creatures, get more mana, do a big pest infestation, end up with a bunch of pests and a bunch of squirrels. And I think we're just in good shape, even though we didn't find any of the Aristocrats pieces yet, just to continue to dig for them. And then once we find them, right, our opponents are in real trouble once we can. Here you got a 3-lander with Arcane Signet, so that's nice. We see Peregrine Took. Anytime we make 1 or more tokens, we make those tokens plus a food. That's going to work really nice with something like the Shire, right, that can make food for us. So here, get the Greaves in, again, just to better protect Chatterfang. I guess we could also have done that last turn. If we do that, we've got 4 mana. I guess Greaves, Blood Artist. Now you've got 5 mana. Chatterfang. Protect it. I want to wait for... I was going to say, I want to wait for Chatter the Squirrel till I get Peregrine Took down, just because I can technically get more off of this 1 spell. So I'm going to have it attempt to make a squirrel, and then it's going to make a food with Took, and then 2 more squirrels with Chatterfang. Because again, 1 from here and 1 from here. And then now that's great, because we're starting to get more creatures. I don't think we have enough mana there yet to sacrifice into Chatterfang. But now with the Eldrazi Monument, this is great, because now we don't even mind losing 1 squirrel, the next turn, to basically now have this set up. So now I'm thinking I would Bastion, but we need a way to make tokens, don't we? We tap the Shire for a food, which makes me a squirrel. I've got enough mana left to hold up like Assassin's Trophy. And I'm like, what, 1 food away from this? Whereas if I play Bastion, I'm just trying to think through this line. So if I play Bastion, I get a human soldier, a food, and 2 squirrels. Now I have a nice sack for the monument for next turn, and I'm just 1. Now I have the Death Outlet out there. I still got 2 mana left, still enough for that. This is still getting protected. And now, you have two Aristocrats outlets. You have the Bastion and the Blood Artist. And we still technically have enough mana to use Chatterfang if we wanted to sacrifice a couple squirrels, right, which would trigger both of those. But now, coming to our turn, sack the human to the Eldrazi Monument. Both of those go off. My thought is Grave Pact. I guess it's probably food, right? Tap the Shire for a food, make a squirrel. Sack the 3 foods to draw, right off of Peregrine Took. And then now the squirrels are just a nice threat. If not, you sack them all to hurt an opponent. Remember, it's 2 life or 1 life lost for everybody on the Bastion, and then 1 targeted off of Blood Artist every time one of them dies. So now, really, all we're missing is a key way to make a token, outside of just the Shire, which again we'd probably find in an average game. But the key point here of this playtest, and I want to make sure this is very clear, is that if you're playtesting your deck and you're not finding enough ways to make tokens, now maybe you sit down and you try to find more ways to make tokens, right? Think about it. Try to find more cheap ways to make tokens every turn if possible. Instead of just on a spell or one at a time. Think about it. If you can find you a spell or an ability like a Bitter Blossom or like a what's the card I'm looking for? That black enchantment from War of the Spark that makes that amass zombies 1 every turn. Try to or even black market connections. You just try to find ways that make you tokens every turn so that you're going to get them. And that, I think, is the difference between what probably will be, taking your Chatterfang deck up to the next level. Playtest 3 here, 3-laner with the Farseeks. We've got plenty, and the Nature's Lore. So plenty of mana. There's the Chitter Spitter. There's Tireless Provisioner. Again, I like being able to get your mana here, right? We have multiple ways to ramp us up so that way we know we can get access to more mana. I thought about waiting the turn to get in for Tireless Provisioner. My thought is Swamp, make the treasure. It feels a little awkward, but my thought is now you're getting more value. So if I play Chatterfang here, play the Nature's Lore, I'm getting 2 treasures, 2 squirrels. 1 treasure, 1 squirrel. I play Peregrine, Nature's Lore, I'm getting a food and a treasure, right? Or technically I could get... Yeah, there's a lot of ways we could look at that. I'm almost wondering if it's worth it just like getting the doubling season down this turn. Because then, you're getting double the tokens. And now, well, that works out great. Now my thought is Chatterfang, Wastewood Verge. So I'm going to go ahead and get 2 treasures off of the thing. But remember, it would be 2 treasures and 2 squirrels. And then you could crack the treasures for the Nature's Lore, right? Now you're guaranteed to go get another land, right? And now you're going to do the same thing. You're going to get more treasures and more squirrels. So now we're starting to see the amounts of the things in our things ramp up. 6 here. Peregrine would start to get me some of that. I'm thinking Peregrine, Chitter Spitter, play the Forest. 2, 2, 2. So the thought is go to make the treasure. The treasure would get replaced with a food. That would make, or the treasure would become treasure and a food. Then Chatterfang goes off, making you treasure and a food and 2 squirrels, which would get doubled to 4. So that's pretty nice. And then now, tap that to make a couple squirrels, right? Now we're just in great shape. I mean, if somebody wipes the board, that would stink. But now, you even have the option to do it on your own meat hook if you wanted to. Oh yeah, we'd have the mana there to do it as well. Because my only thought about meat hooking yourself is you could get 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 damage off on your opponents right now, and then we could continue to try to get more. But again, sack a squirrel to the Chitter Spitter, right? Just to allow it to get its counter. Even if, like I said, the nice thing is even if you meat hook for 0, you now still hold Chatterfang's ability up as a threat to your opponents because of that life loss. And then, you could Chatterstorm now making 4 more because that's your second spell cast. I just realized that you'd probably be netting more food. I kind of lost track there, but again, it goes to show you where some of these abilities all at the same time can be really useful, and you're starting to see where you can start to really build those value engines together as you're adding them all together right in front of you. But let me know, what do you think of Chatterfang down in the comment section below? I really like this one. I think it's a really interesting deck. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can make Chatterfang a whole lot better than this. I think it's one of those decks that the amount that you want to focus on squirrels is completely up to you. You could cut every single thing that cares about squirrels other than Chatterfang out of this deck. Absolutely go deep on tokens and all that. And you could make this a really, brutal aristocrats deck that way. You could lean more into squirrels if you wanted to and kind of run this deck a little bit more up the veins of like Camellia and Hazel and play more of the Bloomborough like food route if you want to. I tried to do some of that as well. But you could do more of that. You're still playing the Aristocrats game plan because Forage is still sacrificing foods. So you could see that the options are going to be just basically up to what you want. But I'd love to know what you think of Chatterfang, and I will catch you all next.